17 months after leaving Biograph, Griffith opened a film that would change the course of American cinema.
I saw that first night without any inkling of what was coming up, but I sat and watched players come in until the entire orchestra pit was fitted. And I didn't realize until that time that the entire Los Angeles Philharmonic Orchestra had been hired to play the picture. An unheard of thing.
The conductor strode to the rostrum.
And when he raised his baton and held it for a moment, and down it came, everything just blew right out of the... Oh, it was the most tremendous gust of sound I'd ever heard.
The audience realized it was watching an extraordinary film. Under the title of The Birth of a Nation, it was to prove the most controversial ever made, controversial to this day. Thomas Dixon, a firebrand preacher from the South, had written 2 novels about the agonizing period after the Civil War, which he turned into a notorious play. Highly inflammatory, the play had caused minor riots. But Griffith was enthusiastic. Here was a subject which could cause a stir like that great play he'd so longed to write. He would add to Dixon's story an episode showing the South before the war. He would introduce a Southern family, the Camerons, meeting old friends from the North. He would add scenes of romance, scenes of the cotton fields of the Old South, where the black slaves worked hard, but willingly for their masters. Lincoln's election creates a Southern threat to the Union. The next time these boys will meet will be on the battlefield. Griffith had acquired a studio in Hollywood, Fine Arts, and a new backer, a distributor, Harry Aitken, assisted by his brother Roy.
He came to us and said he would like to make a longer picture. So we asked him what he meant by that, and he said, I'd like to make one that'll be a whole evening's entertainment. Well, we said, what will it cost? Well, he said, I think the one I have in mind will cost around $40,000. Well, both my brother and I, you might say, almost fainted.
Griffith assembled his cast, most of whom had been with him at Biograph, and put them through 6 weeks of intensive rehearsals. At Biograph, he could have made 12 one-reelers in that time. This is a costume test of Lillian Gish, to whom he gave a leading role. It was customary at the time for black roles to be played by whites. So there were no blacks among the principals, although there were many black extras. In this test, Griffith's assistant, George Siegman, plays a villainous mulatto politician in blackface and ripped jacket. Griffith, unaware of what he was about to unleash, started his biggest film with an enthusiasm which intrigued Bitzer's assistant, Carl Brown.
When he came on the set, he would take off his coat and he would start shadow boxing. And he would just have a fine time throwing whistling rights and jabbing lefts and ducking. And he always defeated the Invisible Man.
And he could burst into Tannhauser or any of the arias of opera at any minute if there was tension on the set.
The first scenes we took had to do with an election and a Negro dance. Well, when these Negroes started dancing barefoot, clapping their hands, the banjos were ringing, Griffith was back of the camera, of course, but emotionally he was in that scene and he was having a wonderful time.
July 1914. A camera test of the trenches being prepared for the battlefield, just as war was about to break out on the other side of the world. It was the 50th anniversary of the Civil War. Griffith planned the most spectacular recreation the screen had seen. Griffith took as much care with the battles as a military commander, assigning sections to assistant directors, most of whom had worked on his earlier battle scenes.
They were handled not by megaphone, because the megaphone could never be heard over the noise of a battle with blank cartridges, but by a series of flags, red, white, yellow, blue, pink, the works. And they could be waved in a certain direction. If you wanted more action out of one side, or more action out of another, or more action in between, that could all be done by flag motion.
Griffith showed the senseless savagery of a war in which brother slaughtered brother. "15 years later, Griffith himself explained the film's genesis.
Oh, I suppose it began when I was a child. I used to get under the table and listen to my father and his friends talk about the battles they'd been through and their struggles. And those things impress you deeply, and I suppose that got into the birth. You know, and you've heard your father tell about fighting day after day, night after night, and having nothing to eat but parched corn.
Griffith knew well this cemetery near his Kentucky home. Carefully tended to this day, it was a reminder to him of the cost to the South, not only in lives, but in pride, for they suffered the humiliation of defeat. Griffith invited veterans for whom this suffering was still a vivid memory when he filmed Sherman's march to the sea.
But a story of people that were fighting desperately against great odds, great sacrifices, suffering, death.
The burning of Atlanta, Sherman's strategy of laying waste the land. The South was a nation to be destroyed.
It was a great struggle, a great story. Story where young girls used to wear cotton or ermine.
No ermine, just soot on unprocessed cotton. The little colonel, played by Henry B. Walthall, returning to his shattered home. Mae Marsh, as the little sister, is now a young woman. Griffith showed that as well as epic spectacle, he could direct a touching reunion with heartfelt emotion. When it was found that Griffith had spent his entire budget on the battle, the Aitkins refused him further funds.
He had $50,000, as I remember, and he disappeared one day. He had never disappeared. He couldn't get sick or have a headache or be tired. We didn't know what had happened, and we found he was downtown at shoe shops, at Clunes, trying to raise $10,000.
We used to bail him out. He used to come down to the city room of the paper that I worked on at that time, the Los Angeles Herald, and we'd pass the hat, take up a collection, and give it to him, say, now go, and he'd go on out to his people and pay them their salary out of that. We thought it was great fun.
All of us in the company were asked to do without salary, as we had to pay extras, the people that got $5 a day that weren't part of the company, and all of us said, of course we'll wait, because we knew when he got the money, we'd get it, and we all did.
In the second half of the film, Griffith followed Dixon's inflammatory original. Newly freed slaves are goaded by carpetbaggers to rise against their former masters. Black servants pay the price of loyalty to their white owners. The Little Colonel calls for the South to save itself, a call for the Night Riders.
1914 or 15 in grade school, about the time that The Birth of a Nation was released. Those books taught us that the Ku Klux Klan was a savior of the South, that if it hadn't been for them, that the carpetbags and the freed Negroes would have taken the whole country over.
The little sister is pursued by a renegade black soldier. The Klan seeks vengeance for her death, dipping flag and flaming cross into her blood. In the town there is black anarchy. White protesters are tarred and feathered. The townspeople can do nothing. Silas Lynch, the leading black figure, has abducted Senator Stoneman's daughter. Klansmen are summoned from every corner of the state for a great ride to the rescue. Wagner's Ride of the Valkyrie filled the theater. Besieged by renegade black soldiers, the Cameron family seeks refuge in a lonely shack.
It was like a call to arms. You just couldn't let go. You weren't watching people ride, you were riding with them. And you weren't riding with them to rescue somebody, but you were riding on a stern determination of vengeance for the death of that beautiful little sister that you'd learned to love so well.
President Wilson was shown the film by Thomas Dixon, his former college classmate. He was impressed, as this letter to Griffith proves. "I congratulate you on a splendid production."
Later on, he had pressure brought upon him by various people, and he renounced that statement. But he did make it of his own free will.
Wilson, a Southerner himself, was unprepared for what happened next.
The Birth of a Nation created a racist problem in the United States that exploded and caused any number of theaters to cancel the film.
Retitled The Birth of a Nation, the film struck a raw nerve in American race relations, yet it was acclaimed as the finest film ever made. But it was also accused of inciting racial hatred by black leaders and white reformers. The film mocked the new representatives of the state assembly in South Carolina. It repeated the stereotypes of the Southern black. William Walker saw the film in 1916 in a blacks-only theatre.
And some people were crying. You could hear people saying, "Oh, God." And some say, "Damn." Like, you could hear them because of the reaction of the people. You had the worst feeling in the world. It just felt like you were, well, you were not counted. You were just out of existence. Well, I tell you, I just felt like I wish I could have been there some way so they couldn't see me, so I could kill some of them. I just felt like going out and killing every white person I saw in the world.
In Boston, home of the abolitionists, protesters took to the streets. The National Board and censors in many cities demanded extensive cuts. Some demonstrations developed into minor riots.
Somebody mentioned that if he ever showed a picture like this in Atlanta, the result would be race riots, to which Griffith said, "I hope to God they do." It wasn't that he was particularly anxious for a riot or people to be hurt or anything of the sort, but it's the old story of somebody deals you a tremendous pat hand, and you look at it and know it can't lose, you're going to play it.
An important aspect of the fire that motivates him to do this is that this is going to be an act of provocation. This is going to be a film to which nobody is going to be indifferent, to which nobody can be indifferent. And part of the mark against Griffith is that for him, his art has become so important that he's willing to sacrifice just about any other consideration.
He has been accused of being a racist, and I don't think that he was, consciously. I think anyone raised in an atmosphere where there were slaves would be unconsciously racist to a certain extent.
Mr. Griffith loved the black people. We never thought there was anything against the blacks. As you notice, the blacks are led by a white man who was patterned after Thaddeus Stevens, a senator, who said to the black people, "We will crush the white South under the heels of the black South."
Griffith had toned down Dixon's racism. After all, it was only 3 years earlier that he had depicted the Klan as renegades in this biograph. Night riders attack a planter who refuses to join the Klan. But in The Birth of a Nation, they were the heroes. In Atlanta, the publicity was used by the Klan to promote its revival. How much the film helped is still a matter of controversy.
The Birth of a Nation had a lot to do about giving life to Ku Klux Klan by giving them a shot in the arm and giving them strength, and they knew that they were right.
The massive rallies of the 20s would have happened with or without the film, but the Klan claimed it as a recruiting agent. Both Griffith and Dixon opposed the new Klan, but The Birth of a Nation was reissued in the 1920s with this image on the poster. The film earned untold millions. It turned distributors like Louis B. Mayer into moguls. Massive picture palaces would be built for a new audience. The middle class had at last been won over.
And the fact that the showing of the Klansmen started riots and put blood on the streets was proof beyond proof that it was a great and powerful picture, regardless of what any critic might have to say about it. The proof was there.
What Griffith made in those few short months was perhaps the most astonishing landmark in cinema history. The only film which can still arouse passion and provoke protest 80 years after it was made. Griffith had invented film as art and as propaganda. In 1915, he was seen as the greatest filmmaker in the world. He dominated the industry as no man would dominate it again.